Hello everyone, and welcome to another patron-only Eventide stream. Hi there, I am Jason Bullman. I'm the Director of Game Design and the creator of the Eventide setting. And today, what I'd like to do is chat with all of you about the first session of the campaign set in Eventide. I'm super excited to share some anecdotes from it, some lessons learned, and some possible changes I might make before I give it to all of you. Now, as I've mentioned in previous gatherings here, what we're doing is we're creating an introductory adventure called Wolfren's Fate. And Wolfren's Fate is a multi-part adventure. It's broken up into 4 parts. This is only the first session of the first part, so we are just dipping our toe into the story here. We've got plenty more to do. But the process is write the adventure, play test it with both my groups, refine it, and then release it to all of you. You're going to get the pieces as I go along. I'm not going to make you wait till the end. Although at the end, I'll probably polish it up, make it into a nice, solid, cohesive adventure PDF that I'll put up for sale. Everyone at the Master and Lord tier will get that for free. Everyone at the Scholar tier will get it for half price. So that's what we're doing. But we are at the very beginning of that. That's step 28. We're at step, well, like 2 right now. So what's happened is the first of 2 groups has played their first session. The second group plays tomorrow night. Normally, that group would have already played yesterday. Because what I'm trying to do is have it so that both the groups, which are called the Thursday group and the Monday group, the Thursday group and the Monday group happen between 2 of these Tuesday streams. But this first one had to happen slightly out of order because I had a scheduling conflict. The rest look clean. I think we're going to be good from here on out. But this first one, we're doing a little out of order. So I only have one group to talk about. We'll talk about the next one next week, as well as look forward to the next part of the adventure. But that's where we're at. So let's dive right in. Let's talk about this first group. Now, I'm not going to, as I've mentioned before, I'm not going to identify any of the players by name. I'm just going to talk about them as their characters. If they want to self-identify on social media, that is their prerogative, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to out them as being players in my game. Not because there's anything wrong with that, but because I'd rather they have control over their own social media. So, instead, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about them by name. So, what we got here is it's a 5-person group. We've got 5 characters here, and at the very start of the adventure, kind of an introduction, right? The story goes that Wolfren's tower is finally opened. There's been a dragon skeleton draped over it for several hundred years, and they couldn't get inside because the skeleton was petrified. But part of the wing falls off, and it allows entrance to the tower. And there's a rush of adventurers to sign up and enter the tower. They come in a couple different varieties. One is there are 2 groups of adventurers that sign up that are pre-made groups. One is called the Thunder Company, and one is called Grablin's Lot. And the Thunder Company is like a professional bunch of mercenaries who know what they're doing, who are hardcore. And then Grablin's Lot is a bunch of fresh, minted, new off the farm, right out of the blacksmith shop adventurers. Not unlike the PCs, but maybe even more newbie. Like, maybe don't even have their class levels yet. They're still trying to figure it out, and they're here to adventure. And then there's a bunch of loose characters that sign up, and that's the player characters. And all of the people who sign up in the loose list get formed into a group, because the town council announces that it's going to allow the groups to enter one at a time. That way, you know, they're not all trying to rush through the door all at once, but that way they can kind of work as a team, as a group, and kind of work together. So in the intro, there's a bit of intro text, and then the characters are allowed to sign up. And once they've all signed up, at the same time, the owner of the local tavern, the Stonefang Tavern, is out in the square calling out to everyone who signed up, offering them free ale for signing up. She wants to get to know them, and frankly, she wants the publicity of having adventurers in her bar. And it works, because the player characters all go to get a drink. Now, there are 5 player characters. They all arrive at this table. I'm going to describe them here in just a moment. But they are joined by a 6th character. Now, this is something I added between last session and this session. Because one thing I realized that I needed from a narrative standpoint was I needed an NPC who made sense to be at the table, who would talk to the PCs and had a reason to question them and interact with them, especially when I have new players at the table, which I do on this one. I've got a couple players who have never really played Pathfinder 2nd Edition before, and at least one of them has barely role-played before. That doesn't mean never, but it's just not role-played all that much. So, I wanted to have a character that I could use as an authorial voice and chat with the player characters and kind of bring them out of their shell and get them to introduce themselves. As opposed to just kind of doing the generic kind of GM, I don't know, why don't you introduce yourself? You go first, right? Having a character who could have voice to that and ask questions and kind of get them to interact a bit. So that is why I added a character called Grayfon Nimblebrow. He's a halfling, if you didn't guess it from that name. Grayfon Nimblebrow was at the table as well. So all 6 of them are there. And Grayfon is like, so who are all you? We're going to be adventuring together. It's going to be super exciting. Grayfon is an excitable sort. So the characters that got introduced are, we have Zera. Zera is a dwarf bomber alchemist with a dabbling of poultices and herbalism. Some of the poultice stuff from the Eventide Player's Guide and some herbalism stuff. So light on the healing, mostly bomber, but a little bit of healing. Bomber with a couple healing options. That is Zara. Zara's kind of no nonsense, at least so far, right? One thing I should note, this is something I do in all of my games, is the player characters I don't really consider set in stone until they hit 2nd level. So between now and when they hit 2nd level, they can change aspects of their character. They can rewrite parts of their backstory if they want. They can kind of change up some aspects, like if they don't like a feat that they took, or they realize that one of the spells that they took isn't quite what they wanted to do, they can just swap that stuff out. By the time they hit 2nd level, though, I want them to gel. So right now, this is what we know about these characters. I've only seen them in action for a few hours, and we're sharing table and spotlight time. So not exactly getting a deep dive yet. So, but Zera seems kind of no nonsense dwarven alchemist. Next up, we have Garrett. Garrett is an echo-touched human penumbrist. So echo-touched is one of the new human heritages that you can pick, and that means that you can trace kind of your descendants directly to those who kind of came over the top of the world centuries ago and became kind of the first humans and all. They have a penchant for having this echo-touched heritage. And so Garrett is a penumbrist who, with the jester voice and a shadow familiar. And Garrett was trained down in Zankar, we think. I think that's part of his background. Not sure the other characters know that yet. So, but that should be interesting. Garrett is mostly, he's a penumbrist, so he's got a bunch of shadow and dark magic stuff. But right now we haven't seen a lot of it. We've seen a little in the first session. And I'll get to why the first encounter really messes with it. Next up, we got Keth. Keth is a half-orc barbarian of the Cold Instinct. So this is, again, something from the Player's Guide. And I didn't tell them you have to take something from the Player's Guide. Most of them did, but they didn't have to. But this group in particular decided to. I think the second group is far less prone to take stuff from the Player's Guide, but we'll see some of it, I'm sure. Yeah, who knows? I don't think Garrett's a spy, but Zankar spy, but you never know. So we got Keth, who is a half-orc barbarian with Cold Instinct. Again, that's kind of all we know right now. Next up is a particularly special character called Axon. Axon is a goblin bard with the Shadow Muse, again, from the Eventide Player's Guide. And Axon we know a lot about because Axon spent most of the first session spouting off conspiracy theories and trying to sell various forms of snake oil to the other characters and NPCs. So that's been exciting. Goblin bard kind of con artist, fraudster. Yeah, it's an interesting character. And then last but not least, we have a character called Rocky. And Rocky is an echo-touched human rogue, who is not actually from this area, but kind of woke up here after a brawl in a tavern, kind of lost time for a period of time, and woke up in Wormbone, and has been trying to earn coin and find a way home ever since. So that's our motley band. Then of course, you also have Grayfon Nimblebrow, the halfling. Now, the way it all starts is they all end up in this tavern. They're chatting, they're talking, they're introducing themselves, and they are talking to Grayfon, and they're like, "Wait, are we adventuring together?" And Grayfon is once again there to be an exposition piece, which is why I realized this character was important in this first scene. This first scene is really the introduce yourself to the other characters moment that is happening in a setting that isn't life or death, so it seems a little bit more natural. But even then, the adventure story itself says, hey, keep it moving, right? This is meant to be short. This is meant to be 20, 30 minutes tops of characters introducing themselves, reading through the backstory, and then you hop into the... And that's pretty much what we did. Took a little bit more effort. One of the things that I didn't quite account for with this first session is got a bunch of new players, so I had to kind of walk through combat a little bit slower than I know. Nothing wrong with that. I suspect it'll happen to the other group as well. So, budget extra time. But that said, the adventure is one where cliffhangers are abound around every corner, so it was real easy for me to find a natural breakpoint. Now, I'll get to that here. So they sat through the announcement. They went and got drinks at the Stone Fang. Grayfon is chatting with all of them. Axon convinced Grayfon to buy this goblin brain adventurer elixir, and Grayfon bought it and was like, when should I drink it? It's like, well, you should make sure to drink it tonight. That way I can sell you more tomorrow. So Grayfon took it home and was going to drink it later on that night. Now, mind you, it's nothing special. It's actually a pint of lamp oil. So there's that. So that was kind of the intro. That was like the first half hour or so. A little bit of chit chat, a little bit of talking about table etiquette and stuff like that. But we kind of hopped right into it and got through all of that in about half. We then jumped to the next morning where everyone is gathered back together. Now, everyone is gathered back together except for Grayfon. He doesn't show. To which Axon's player pronounced, Did I kill him? To which I did not answer. And, to be honest, I'm not going to answer it here either. Grayfon, there is a story there, and I'm not quite ready to reveal it yet because I want to make sure I do it right. But Grayfon does not show up, and he's not going to show up for the other group either. So it wasn't the oil; it's something else. But that was pretty entertaining. That was the first kind of serious chuckle of the session. So at this point in time, the announcements are made. The tower is opened. They're informed of the rules, right? They're told, hey, listen, no fighting the other adventurers. We get to first rights to buy anything you find. You have to be truthful and honest with us what you find in there, yada, yada, yada. So the player characters agree, and their group is selected to go in first. This is automatic in the adventure. And they enter the tower. And when they first step in, they get kind of this weird kind of head swimmy, their vision kind of spins for a moment. And that's because they're stepping through a doorway that actually takes them below ground. And it's a little disorienting. Because the first room they're in takes up most of the first floor of the tower. And the way the map is kind of situated, you can kind of tell that. Here, let's take a peek. So this is the map of the square with all the NPCs on it. Now the tower is up there at the north, and you can kind of see some NPCs sitting around it. That's the kind of, it's only like 25 feet in diameter. So that's the tower. But when they enter the tower, we hop over to this map, And you can just see down here at the bottom in the middle of the map, you can see the tower outline. These are to the same scale. And then you can see the room inside there, and it is, 15 feet by 10 feet inside of a tower that's only 25 feet in diameter. So the vestibule takes up most of the first floor, and the moment they walked in, because the map has dynamic lighting turned on Roll20, they can't see the rest of the map. It's all black. So it looks like they're just walking in from outside, and then all of a sudden it's bigger than they thought. So they get into the cloakroom, they do some exploration in there, they find a trinket or two, but then they enter the main hall. So map-wise, they kind of spend some time exploring that room in the middle there on the south, and then they enter the kind of main room in the center of. And this is the room with the first fight of the dungeon. And this fight is against a handful of animated brooms and an animated coat rack, which is a new monster in this adventure. It's nothing special. It's a level 1 construct. It's a coat rack. If it crits you with, it has a hook attack it can attack you with, and legs. And the legs have the trip ability, and the hook has the ability to snatch weapons out of your hands or items out of your hands if it scores a critical hit with a hook attack. Should that happen. So what happens is they walk into the room and they start kicking up all the dust and dirt, and these brooms and this coat rack come out and attack. Now the story here is that these animated objects used to be programmed to keep everything meticulously clean, but over the centuries, after everything got covered in dust, now they view the dust and the layers of filth all over everything as clean. So the moment the players come in and start disturbing everything, they go into a frenzy to try and clean up the place and stop whatever is causing the filth, which in this case is the PCs. So they move to attack. This fight was really interesting. I think there's some lessons that I learned here, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do about them yet. But I think the biggest challenge was it's all constructs, right? The first fight is entirely against a bunch of construct creatures. Now, it's hard to do anything else in a kind of sealed dungeon environment. I could have it be like, yes, there are little conjured servants that appear to clean up the place. But that becomes a little harder to justify. I'm thinking about it. I may, in fact, replace some of the brooms with some summoned creatures. But because they were all constructs, it's actually a pretty tricky fight. There's a bunch of stuff that now suddenly doesn't work on them. This is where Garrett the Penumbrist had a particular problem. Most of his spells are mental or illusion, and those things just do not work on constructs at all. Yeah, the Sorcerer's Apprentice was playing during the combat. No. But that joke was made. So the thing that really hampered him, though, and that's kind of why I want to wait to change anything until after the second group has run through it, is the dice were real swingy. The player characters could not roll above a 7 or 8 for the first, 2 rounds of the fight. So, for 2 whole rounds, nobody was damaging these things, or, they were taking marginal amounts of damage, 1 point here, 1 point there. The hardness was really being tricky. But the thing that really swinged it was the coat rack scored a critical hit on the Penumbrist, and took him from 16 all the way down to 2 hit points. So pretty rough. He took a lot of damage very quickly. He was still up at 2, but did not have immediately went into defensive mode, fled from the combatant, and kind of had the whole group kind of shuffle up. Now, as it turns out, nobody even went unconscious in this fight. So even the Penumbrist, who was dropped all the way down to 2, was still at 2 at the end of the fight. So, I don't want to be too reactionary. It wasn't a particularly hard fight. The way that this encounter is set up is it is 2 brooms in the coat rack, plus 1 additional broom for each character over 4. So for this group, it's an extra broom. Every one of these encounters, by the way, is going to include an adjustment for adding a 5th or a 6th player. So some of the encounters later add hit points. That's kind of one way to amp up the difficulty a hair without making the monster significantly more powerful. Others add low-level threats. So it's got some scaling built into it. So there's plenty of things I can do there. And in fact, you know, I mean, the biggest thing, like, the hardness of these things is only like 3, right? 2 or 3, right? It's not a lot. It's not that hard to overcome. It was a matter of, you know, there being just a hair, you know, bad dice rolling plus some character decisions that were like, oh yeah, no, you're not gonna, that spell's just not gonna work. Just kind of put them in a bit of a pickle. But I don't, like I said, this is one of those things that, I'll pull away the screen here and show you a bit about how I design things, is I try not to make decisions right away off of one data point. Just not as useful, right? So I'm going to run it with the second group. If I see the exact same problems happening again, then maybe I do an adjustment. If I don't see any problems, if they roll just fine and it's an easy mop-up fight, I mean, they're brooms, not mops. That's the mood I'm in tonight. Then, you know, I won't change anything at all. And I doubt that I'll have to. But it was a data point of all of the things that happened in the first session. This fight ended up being a bit harder than I thought. Now, things kind of came back around pretty quickly. The Barbarian raged and just started chopping brooms in half pretty easily. They were pretty much one-hit, one-kills for the Barbarian. And the Penumbrist actually ended up coming back and doing significant damage using telekinetic projectile and queuing off part of my description of there being a crystal decanter on one of the tables. Was like, I take the crystal decanter and I throw it at the thing, and I'm like, cool. And it did a whole bunch of damage. He didn't know that that crystal decanter was a piece of treasure that he just destroyed. That was actually one of the more valuable objects in the room. But there we are. I'm trying to remember if they found the dragon scale in the fireplace. I think they might have. Double check. I think they found it. So they got most of the treasure in these first 2 rooms, kind of as designed. The players are kind of supposed to get most of the treasure in the first couple chambers. Beyond that, there's going to be at least one chamber that they don't get the loot. That when they, you know, when they go to explore something, the one of the other groups is going to get there first and get the majority of it. So yeah, it kind of wrapped up with the rogue getting in some good flanks, the barbarian doing some crushing hits, and the rest of the characters just kind of either providing aid in the form of flanking or, you know, making quick and easy attacks. You know, everybody contributed, but I think, you know, looking back on it, it's clearly the barbarians fight to win, just because of the hardness. The other folks had, you know, weapons that was like they could roll and only do a point of damage, or maybe even 0. That did happen once or twice. You know, if you're rolling a d6 and you get a 3, no damage. So at the end of that fight, the ghost appears of the Major Domo. This is his first appearance, and he frets and worries about the state of the place before vanishing in a blast of dust and picking up a whole bunch of dust and cobwebs. So they've met the Major Domo. They don't yet understand the significance of it. They're mostly just worried about, you know, interfering with this character that they don't really understand yet. And they're not supposed to. It won't become clear until the Major Domo appears several more times. Which is, again, by design. It's all about layering on the kind of story and not just dumping it all in one room. So that no matter kind of where they go, they're going to learn a bit more, they're going to explore a bit more, and going to kind of piece together the mystery of this place. And they will do it kind of before anyone else just because they were the first one. This gives them an edge that the other groups don't have. The Thunder Company comes in second. So as they went into that Great Hall, the Thunder Company then entered in the vestibule. When they leave the Great Hall, the Thunder Company enters the Great Hall, and then Grablin's Lot enters the vestibule. So the other 2 groups file in. And to keep life simple, the adventure tells you, yeah, they're never in the same room at the same time. The players always get to choose where they go first, but they have to kind of go following the layout of the map. The other groups go to, you know, the Thunder Company goes to the first room they can find where the players have not been. So that's kind of their objective every time, is to go somewhere the players have not yet gone. I don't think that's going to be hard to do. I can see groups possibly trying to zigzag across the dungeon to cut off their exploration choices. But even then, there's no way they can prevent them fully from getting to at least one room that the players will not have gotten to. It is impossible. So, there's that. So the ghost appears, and at this point in time, mind you, we only had a 3-hour session. So after the intro, after entering the tower, after exploring the vestibule, after going in and having the fight, after exploring the Great Hall, our time was already almost done, right? So they spent a good deal of time exploring the Great Hall. They kind of poked around the fireplaces. They found Wolfren's pipe. They found Dragon Scale. They found the remnants of the crystal decanter that was magical that they broke. Didn't really do anything special, just kept the contents fresh. So there was brandy inside that was 300 years old. It was worth a couple gold, but it also did a bunch of damage to the coat rack. So, you know, prices were paid. The very expensive ammunition for that fell, I guess. So they took care of that, and then from there, their next choice was to leave the room, and they kind of hemmed and hawed a bit. They did not know which way to go. There are 3 ways out of this room, right? So if you look back here, there are 3 ways out of this chamber. There's the southwest, the southeast, and the north door. So there's you know, a fair number of options there. And after mulling it over a bit, they decided to go to the southeast. So they started heading towards the chamber with the collapsed room, and this is the parlor. So they wandered off that way, and they've entered the parlor space. And the session came to kind of a close as they walked into that space. Took a look around, seeing the old elven game board set up across the room. Seeing kind of bookshelves filled with ledgers and stuff like that. Seeing this map, by the way, is a bit incomplete. I've changed it since then. There's now only a bookcase on one side, and there are chairs, rows of chairs, because it used to be his lecture hall. If he had people over for a lecture or something, where he would do it. Game parlor and lecture hall. So they saw a bunch of that, and then a bunch of scorpions, or not scorpions, centipedes come crawling out of the debris. So as it turns out, one of my players really doesn't like centipedes. I'm going to check in with her to make sure that it's okay. I probably won't describe them in too much detail. But there are some giant centipedes that come crawling out of the rubble to attack. So, you know, again, the challenges of the previous fight are going to be completely fine here, or at least they should be. A lot of the spells and things that don't work on objects will work on centipedes. Not all of them, because centipedes aren't exactly super smart creatures either, but I think they'll have a lot more of them. Now, that does speak to the other thing. There's only one other fight in this entire dungeon, and that's against another animated object. So, the initial design here is a little lopsided in the creatures you can face. There's part of me that's wondering if I shouldn't add... There are also 2 haunts that kind of work like encounters that you have to deal with. So, one haunt throws books at you, another haunt is kind of a food fight. So, there's 2 haunts, there's 3 fights. Between all that stuff, there should be plenty of ways for all of the characters of different types to coordinate. But it does make me think that I might want to swap out one of the fights for a summoned creature. Just to have a bog standard monster fight. Something that got summoned here and hasn't been able to go home and is just in a bad mood. So there's part of me that thinks maybe I should replace one of the encounters with that. Not really sold which one yet. I might... There's part of me that thinks I could replace, instead of having 2 haunts, I could replace the other book, the book-throwing haunt, with some creature that's been summoned there. And that might work as well. So I'll give that some thought. It does mean that entire side of the map has fights on it, which is a bit tough. But if I swap the other one, it means that side of the map has fights on it. So it doesn't really. I could, of course, put another small fight, make it a relatively easy fight, in the only room that doesn't have a haunt or a fight, which is the tapestry room. That's the room in the middle of the north. And that might solve up the problem by just having another simple fight. But, you know, it's worth thinking about. because of the way summons work in this world, creatures that are summoned can find themselves unable to return home at the end of the spell's duration. So there is something there about... This was something I was going to use a little later in the dungeon, down in the second floor, about having some summoned creatures. But frankly, I can do it twice and really drive home the point. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. I'm not 100% sure just yet. All right. So, where does that leave us? Well, that was the first session, right? So, I think the second session will probably see them get through most of the rooms in that part of the on this level of the dungeon. There's going to be 2 fights, but really there's going to be, 2 fights and the haunts. They may not finish it. But it wouldn't surprise me if it goes a little faster with the second session. A, they know their characters a bit better, and B, there's no kind of lengthy intro or setup. Instead, they, can get right to the action. So I have a sneaking suspicion that means that the adventure itself is going to go a little quicker. Now, looking forward, I've got the second group who's about to enter... tomorrow night is the second group, and character wise I don't know all of the details yet. You know what, now if I sit here and think about it, I think I do. I've got an elven sorcerer who I think is a draconic sorcerer. I've got a gloamling rogue. I've got a... Let's see. Gloamling rogue. I've got another goblin bard. So both groups have a goblin bard. So Michael, that's I got an interesting question from chat here about a summoned shadow elemental as possibly being a creature in here. I don't want to let that pass. I don't think that is the way to go, and I think it has to do with the overall story. I don't think Wolfren would deal with shadow creatures, because he is investigating kind of everything that's going on and would be wary of. There's that. There is, let's see, character-wise, I've got a goblin bard, I've got a gloamling rogue, I've got an elven sorcerer, I've got I want to say a human type. Yeah, I'm spacing. I know what they all are. I just need to look them up, and I didn't do that because I was preparing for today's chat, not tomorrow's game. I've got all their stats. I just haven't looked at them. So that is kind of the complete summary. I'm going to open it up to questions here a bit earlier than normal, just because the summary here went a little shorter than I would have liked. We got a comment here that I could have it where the PCs help the noob NPCs from an encounter. There is actually space in the adventure for that. It's not coded in there just yet. I may kind of opportunistically see if I can work something like that in. It was in each encounter, there's a bit called exploration, and it basically says what happens to this encounter if the PCs aren't the first group there, and what happens in this place after the PCs go through and the other groups get there. So mostly it describes, here's what happens to the loot that's in the room, right? But in the case of the combat encounters, well, one of them is dealt with by the PCs before any other group can even get there. So I'm assuming that it'll be destroyed. But then we've got the centipedes and the animated oven. And in both cases, if the Thunder Company goes there before the player characters, they do some damage and move on, but they don't kill it. They loot and run. If Grablin's Lot gets there before the player characters do, they just get hurt and show up bandaged and beat up. So, I think one thing I'm not going to do is kill any members of Grablin's Lot or the Thunder Company. Not in this dungeon and not right now. They are both being set up as potential mines for future conflict and future storylines. I don't think I want to kill anyone from Grablin's Lot. They are meant to be bashed, beat up, burned, stung, poisoned, and possibly leave here carrying an unconscious party member. but none of them will die. That is quite possibly part of their story. In fact, I may even have a bit in there that's like, if Gremlin's Lot gets to the animated oven, that is the end of their adventuring day, right? They do not make it any further. The oven beats the crap out of them because it's like level 3. It is powerful. It is the most dangerous thing in this dungeon. And they just flee, right? They end up with people who are badly burned and unconscious, and then they just go. They're just like, no, this place is too much. So, I think that's probably the way that'll play out. The Thunder Company, if they get there first, they take some of the treasure and deal some damage to the oven. So, you know, depending on how things go, you might be okay with that. And the oven's really tough, but it also has a bit in there that once it hits half hit points, it uses its fiery breath ability and powers down. So it stops fighting once you knock it below half. It does one final kind of act against you and then goes inactive. This is, well, it's not really designed to be a safety hatch for the players, but the point of it is that thing is really dangerous and quite possibly deadly to first level characters. So having it only work on about half of its hit points seems to make more sense. And then it allows it to be a threat in the future, because once you help the Major Domo, he eventually fixes it, and then it can attack you again in a later part in the adventure. So we'll see if that happens or not. Some groups may beat it to pieces and assume that it's not destroyed when it stops working, but I have a sneaking suspicion the moment it kind of teeters to one side, lets out a blast of flame, and its fire goes out and it falls down, they will assume it is dead. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm not sure both groups will do that, but it would not be outside of character for them to do. So we will certainly see how it goes. Now, there is one other thing I wanted to show everybody here tonight, and I'm just going to show you one. Folks in this Saturday stream are going to get to see all of them, but I've got some sketches from my artist, and I think what I would love to show everyone is a sketch for Penumbris. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this in. I knew I forgot something. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go ahead and load this up so that I can show folks. All right. So, I am working with an artist out of the UK named William Hallett is the artist that I'm working with. And I picked William because his art style, a lot of the sample pieces in his portfolio showed an excellent use of color and light. In particular, he had a number of pieces that really had the right kind of qualities I was looking for pieces that would happen at dusk. Dusk and sunset is a really hard time to get kind of right. Just a second. And William's work really does a great job of kind of capturing that moment of sunset. My throat here. Ugh. I don't know about the rest of you, but allergies are just killing me right now. Okay, so I've asked William to do a handful of pieces for me. He's going to do the cover to the player's guide. I've also got him working on a piece for the Gloamling, a piece for the Senesaur Elf. I wanted a male Senesaur Elf because I have a female, but that female is also a very specific character from the kind of Eventide pre-made campaign that I was working on a few years ago, and I want to save that character for that. And then I also had him do a drawing of the Penumbris. So I'm going to show you the sketch of the Penumbrist here today. Mind you, this is just a sketch. It's real loose. This is, you know, his first draft on a thing. I haven't even given him notes on it. That's going to happen tomorrow. So I'm not going to be posting this yet to any of my location, but I wanted to give you all here because you came and hung out with me here tonight. I wanted to give you a look at the first piece of art of the Penumbrist. Here we go. So the art order here is for a female echo-touched human, so she's going to be very pale. She's going to have very dark-colored hair. The art order here very specifically calls for her cloak to be ragged and torn, almost as if made of shadow, and for her fist to be calling out kind of shadow magic that is flowing from her clenched fist. In addition to that, her blade doesn't look like it's made of metal. It looks like it's made of oily liquid shadow made solid, because I think she's going to be a snarler Penumbrist. So her entire shtick is going to be focused fighting and stabbing folks with her shadow blades and so that is a very early sketch. This is just, like I said, the very first draft of this piece. Yeah, I'm very happy with it. I've got some notes about this and some of the other pieces as well. But, you know, it's a start, and I'm really excited to see what William comes up with. I was really impressed with his kind of control over light. In art, that is a harder thing to find than you might think. Finding an artist that can do sunset and kind of that glow is easier said than done. So I'm excited about it. I'm going to be looking forward to getting these pieces. I should have the finals in about a month, except for the cover. The cover may take about a month longer. So I'm going to be engaging with some other artists here soon. So as the time goes by, I'm going to spend more and more of this of your support, honestly, on art, because it is by far the most expensive thing in any game book is the art. So the words are cheap. The art is very expensive. So we're going to get some more of that here going relatively soon. I've got about 3 or 4 more artists that I want to reach out to and see if they're interested in doing some work. I'm probably going to reach out to the first one here in a few weeks. Yeah, William does good work. The sketches there are pretty light and loose, but it's always nice to see a sketch that's like, okay, yeah, you followed the order pretty much precisely, right? I don't really have very many comments. I've got a couple light touches, and I got to make sure that some of his final formatting comes in ways maximally useful to me, but that shouldn't be too much. So I'm pretty excited. Art is always one of those things that really brings a lot to a project. And, you know, having some of it for this project is really going to help bring folks on board, because it helps people imagine the world and the game you're trying to sell. So, yeah, it's coming together. So that is where we're at. We got a few minutes left here. If anybody has any questions about the adventure or, you know, just the campaign in general, I'm happy to kind of answer generic questions at this point in time. I've got another stream starting here in about 15 minutes, so I probably only got about 5 minutes to go before we start that up. Tomorrow night, as I said, is the second group's session. I'm excited for that. They have been getting ready. I'm not sure if this second group is going to be the more serious of the two group. If the first one is a bit more comic in its leanings, it certainly feels that way to me. But you never really know until both groups kind of sit down and get going. So God knows both groups have some jokers in them. So we will definitely see how it kind of all comes together. But I have a sneaking suspicion this second group has just... It's funny. Both groups have 1 or 2 folks who are very experienced. One or... you know, like one person that's kind of on the bubble, and then like 2 people who are very light in their experience. They've played a bit here and there, but they're by no means pros. So I think both groups are going to kind of go at a similar pace. I'm not worried about either group racing in front of one another or the other, because they both have similar kind of experience levels. But yeah, so what did I learn from all this? Well, first of all, the addition of Grayfon was, turns out, a good call. I was a little unsure that I'd need the character, but it was clear to me that right away I needed that character. And frankly, from a narrative perspective, that character is going to pull some heavy weight. Mainly because, spoilers, they're dead. They got killed in overnight. Who did it? How? Why? That's going to be a thing that I'm going to wrap into a later part of this. But I do think that was important. It's kind of an interesting double blind. It's like, here's this character, and now he's dead. I feel like that is something similar I did with Bort in Fall of Plaguestone. But in that, Bort was kind of the center of the story, or at least the center of the start of the story. Whereas this Grayfon is a nobody. He's a, oh yeah, remember that guy who died at the beginning? That's weird. Or that guy who disappeared, right? You know, I think he's far less critical to the overall story. So there's that. The other thing is, obviously, the encounter mix right now has me a little worried. Not terribly, but a little worried. I do think that I might be fine keeping both the construct fights as long as I add a fight with a summoned creature. Currently, my thought, if I do add one with a summoned creature, it needs to be kind of a pretty easy fight, right? I'm talking about a 40 XP fight, on the table. It would be a let's see here, a trivial fight, maybe a low level fight. I could see maybe throwing a level 2 summoned creature at them. That's kind of interesting. I hadn't really thought about what direction that might take, but there's some level 2s that might make some sense, right? I think. Yeah. The conspiracy theory character is definitely going to fixate on the suspicious death, especially considering the conspiracy theory character is the one who fed the poor halfling a pint of oil and thinks that they killed him. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely some opportunity there. Full of lamp oil. Very suspicious. Yeah, exactly. So a level 2 summoned creature might be interesting. Whatever creature is in the dungeon, right? Whatever creature is there needs to make sense, right? So I am starting to think actually that chamber to the north, right, is my opportunity. I don't want to change anything. Chamber to the north is the way to go. And so looking here at the map, that is the one in the north here, and that chamber is get out of here. That chamber is was originally kind of a lift, like an elevator that went between the various floors. It's the way that Wolfren would take people between the various floors of his tower. But it broke forever ago, right? The magic on it failed and it doesn't work anymore. So maybe he had a temporary summon spell for a creature to work as the bellhop, basically, the elevator operator, and it got summoned here and is now just stuck. It just can't leave. And it doesn't die, it doesn't grow old, it doesn't eat. So it just sits here and the spell requires it to stay here and nothing has come to kill it, which is the only way it can get home. So it throws itself recklessly at the first people who come across it because it wants to die and go home. Or at least it's convinced itself that that's the only way it can get home. That's kind of an interesting story. Maybe I'll play around with that. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll see about working that into the story. Would be fun. Could be an interesting way to kind of play out something that otherwise wouldn't be immediately obvious. So, yeah, I think I'll toy around with that. See, this is the sort of thing. This is my creative process. Oh, you play a thing, you think about it. I'm not sure I'm in love with all the aspects of this. Maybe if I add something else, it'll smooth things out. Maybe if I swap some things around. That's how you do this, right? That's how it goes. All right, folks. I think that's about all I got here today. I want to thank you all for watching. I've got another stream coming up here in just 10 minutes over on Twitch. We're going to be playing some Wrath of the Righteous. Folks, this Saturday we're going to be having another Secrets of Eventide stream. That is the next stream I will be doing after the Twitch stream tonight. The Secrets of Eventide stream this Saturday is probably going to be looking at... boy, I'm not sure yet. You know what? I haven't really thought about it. I might start looking at some of the broader things going on in the world. I might start looking at some of the secrets of the Icescar Valley, because I do want to start getting some of those up for folks to play around with and start dreaming up their own stories set in Even. So maybe, you know what, now that I think about it, I think that's what we'll do. We'll talk about some of the other secrets you can find in Wormbone and some of the stuff that's going to be going up there, because I do have a whole bunch of content for Wormbone and for the Icescar Valley secrets and mysteries there. So tune in, for those of you of the right tier, tune in Saturday for the Secrets of Eventide stream. That'll be at 3 p.m. It'll go till 4, and then I've got another Twitch stream starting at 4. So, folks, that's all we got here today. I want to thank you all for coming, and we will see you next time.